Welcome to Living Green. My name is Mark Hostetler, and today we're going to talk about landscaping for wildlife.
You know, wildlife is all around us. Hardly a day goes by without seeing or hearing an animal or insect. Like us, animals need to eat and drink and have a place to rest. Some animals do quite well in our yards and neighborhoods. Others are more sensitive and find us difficult to live with. Humans have changed the environment to fit their own needs. The end result is a landscape that contains buildings, roads and cars, and lots of lawns. The combination of these factors can put the squeeze on wildlife. Our actions can even affect wildlife in natural areas miles away from urban centers.
However, you can see a variety of wildlife species within your own yard and neighborhood. With just a little bit of planning, you can provide wildlife habitat and also minimize your impact on surrounding lands.
Although each wildlife species is unique, we can do a few specific things to coexist with wildlife.
Now let's explore your options. First, we're going to visit some homeowners that have done some unique things to benefit wildlife. Let's go. So where are we right now? Are we in a park outside some urban area? Are we in a state park, a national park? Well, actually, believe it or not, we're right here within Gainesville, Florida, and this is a front yard. And somebody has decided, as you can see, if you look right, here's the house, to do something a little bit different. Get rid of that lawn and do something wild. So let's go take a look.
So welcome to our beautiful house. And this is really a crazy story because this used to be a perfectly mowed lawn a long time ago. And now it's a jungle, but it's a nice jungle. And we really wanted this house to have a more natural look and feel to the yard, but we didn't have the money to do it and we didn't know what we would do. And so my husband had this crazy idea, maybe we should just let it go and see what happened. Do this interesting experiment to see what nature would do if it was allowed to run its course. So we let it go, and much to my surprise, it has turned into a very interesting landscape.
In fact, many different plants have appeared in Meryl's yard. Grass has disappeared, and currently shrubs and trees are taken over. As trees get bigger, they will actually shade out smaller plants, and the understory will begin to open up.
One morning we walked out and it was really neat. There was a whole field of wildflowers and they were just abuzz with bees everywhere. The whole yard, it just sounded like it was buzzing. It was just amazing, really, really interesting to see that.
As you can see, there is much more vegetation in Meryl's yard than a typical yard. Before, little existed between the tree canopy and the ground. In this yard, critters have a smorgasbord of feeding opportunities. The appearance of native plants in the middle layer provides food for wildlife in terms of fruit, seeds, and even insects.
Can you see me now? Can you see me now? Can you see me now? So what am I doing? Well, I'm talking about cover. Many different species of wildlife need cover to hide from their predators, such as hawks and other large mammals. So anywhere in your yard, you can provide a little bit of cover, a little bit of structure, that important hiding place, you'll get more species in your yard.
One of the things I really like about the house is that we had birdhouses that we put in to attract some of the birds that we thought were in the area, and they really were. And we got screech owl, and the screech owl would come back year after year, and it would sit up in the backyard, and it was so fun to see the owl and think that it might have babies in the yard. The thing I really hated about the yard at first was that there was no organization. There was just this really tall grass. And so we decided to put some mulch trails through it so that we'd be able to not only traverse the yard and get through it, but also so that it would look like it had been planned and it had some order to it and some landscaping.
A lot of the plants that you see here in Meryl's yard is a result of a number of different factors, one of which is birds. As birds are flying over the property, they have eaten seeds and berries, and as it passes through their gut, they literally poop in your yard. And the seeds fall to the ground, they germinate, and that's how you see all these trees and bushes.
One of the things that we wanted to add to the house was a water pond so that animals could come to it and have something to drink, and anything from a deer that might be in the neighborhood to butterflies, frogs. And it's really neat now that we have it in place. It's really kind of given us a frog chorus at night. We can go outside and we hear the frogs, and it's really neat.
So creating a wild habitat in urban areas can look something like this, where you have a lot of vegetation. In fact, you can barely see the house. But to some people, that's just a little bit too much. Is it aesthetically beautiful to you when you look at it?
Well, not only isn't it not aesthetic to me, many of my visitors look at it and say, what are they growing over there? So I said, just a mess, but they intend to improve it in 10 years when we'll all be dead.
Well, this may work if you don't have any neighbors, but there are other options. Come on, let's go look at something a little more tame. Here we are at Marty's yard, and she's also done something very unique for wildlife in terms of landscaping her property.
Marty let portions of the yard go wild. She chose to do a mixture of lawn, ornamentals, and native areas. I call this method controlled chaos.
I decided to try to get rid of a lot of my grass on my property, and so to do that I created islands of vegetation. And in these islands, I planted a mixture of native species and also some ornamentals. And these plants provided some protection for the wildlife, some ground cover. Some of the islands, I also have some flowering plants which attract bees and butterflies. And so I'm reaping the benefit now of enjoying these creatures that are coming into my yard.
Wildlife species can use many different features in a wild yard. Here, a yellow-bellied sapsucker has created holes in the sweet gum tree to drink the sap. Also, other birds will come and drink from this tree. Providing food such as birdseed will attract certain species and supplement their diet. Sometimes though, squirrels and other mammals will raid your bird feeder. Although no feeder is 100% squirrel-proof, this feeder has a bar that depresses when a squirrel gets on it, blocking access to the seed. But hey, the squirrel will try anyway. Maintaining a lawn is not really wildlife friendly. Marty stopped using herbicides and pesticides on her property. As a result, her lawn is actually a mixture of small plants and grass. Insects and other critters thrive in her yard. Ultimately, they serve as food for birds and other wildlife. In many cases, your yard may be too small to attract some species of wildlife. Larger species require bigger patches of habitat. Talk with your neighbors and have the borders of your property go wild. Ultimately, more habitat in the neighborhood will attract more species. Besides, a visual screen from your neighbors can be quite nice.
Okay, that was Marty's yard, and she did something a little bit different than Meryl with those islands of vegetation instead of going totally wild. So let's go to the next yard, and we'll see something a little bit different. Whew. Well, here we are at Paul and Leslie's house, and they lived here for over 30 years, and they've done some really unique things to attract wildlife to their yard. So let's go take a look.
We built this house here about 34 years ago, and the house is sitting where it is on the property so that we didn't have to cut any of the large trees that were here. But we didn't really understand how things grow in Florida. So we tried to impose lawn on the front yard, and we sodded it and watered it and had some sparse grass coming up, but it never took off because of the shade. And one day I had this revelation that if these things that were laying there on the ground, they were called leaves for a reason. You were supposed to leave them there. End of lawn.
We let any trees that died, we left them on the lot and just cut off the tops and left them as snags so that they would attract woodpeckers. And over the years, we have a terrific population of woodpeckers that live here with us. We've maintained this house and lot in a very low maintenance mode. And as a result, we've been able to observe the evolution of the forest around the house, tall trees continuing to grow, smaller ones dying, and the development of a beautiful canopy with open spaces and the changes in lighting that open up new places for plants to grow. It's been really interesting.
In fact, having a diversity of plants creates healthy insect populations, which means lots of food for wildlife. Farming for insects is very important, and anything you can do to increase the insect diversity will increase wildlife diversity. In her yard, we found some invasive plants. Identifying and removing invasive plants is important if you want to improve your yard for wildlife. Invasives push out native plants and take over an area. This is bad for wildlife. Plus, birds, mammals, water, and even the wind can disperse invasive seeds to natural areas miles away from their source. Check with a local expert about which plants are considered invasive in your area. Leslie has a cat named Mickey. Pets can be a problem for wildlife. Cats and dogs prey on many species. Keeping pets indoors or on a leash is healthy for wildlife and for your pet. Outdoor cats can readily convert to being indoors. They can lick their chops and watch wildlife through a window. So as you see, you can do a lot of things to landscape for wildlife in your yard. Do you remember some of the more important tips? Let's do a refresher. The best thing one can do for wildlife is to reduce the amount of lawn. Lawn is like concrete to most animals, and they cannot use it. Plus, think of the money you save from using fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides to maintain a green lawn. The more people that do a natural lawn, the more acceptable a natural yard will become. Imagine, wouldn't it be great if people were chastised for mowing their lawn? No! Native plants are critical for creating wildlife habitat. Not only do they provide wildlife with food and shelter, they are easier to maintain, requiring less water and virtually no fertilizers or pesticides. Most importantly, native plants provide a smorgasbord of insects for wildlife to eat. Provide cover. Your yard will be very attractive to wildlife species if there's places for them to hide. Take a look around. Is there somewhere on your property for wildlife species to take cover? Reduce pesticide and herbicide use. You're essentially wiping out a lot of food for critters. Just say no to spraying. Because there are very few dead trees with nesting holes for birds, think about building a bird box. The size of the box and the hole will attract different species. Providing seed feeders will supplement the diet of wild birds. This can be important, especially during the winter months. And remember, don't cut down the dead trees. In fact, save the snags. And I don't mean this type of snag, I mean that type of snag. If you have to remove a tree near a house, you might want to cut it off at 15 feet or so. The snag will not be a danger to your house, and it will become a great food source and nesting place for a variety of birds.